The sky above Thesser 4 burned orange and black as another Valkara hive ship descended through the atmosphere. Lieutenant Marcus Chun pressed himself against the concrete barrier and checked his medical kit one more time while explosions shook the ground. Beneath his boots, the evacuation was going badly. 3 shuttles had already lifted off from the forward outpost, and 2 more sat on the landing pad with engines screaming, waiting for the last stragglers from the 47th Combined Regiment to board. Marcus ran toward the nearest shuttle when he heard the screaming. It came from the eastern bunker, where the Arxian scouts had set up their observation post. High-pitched and terrified in a way that made his medic instincts override his common sense, he changed direction and sprinted toward the sound. Inside the bunker, he found chaos. 6 Archean soldiers stood in a tight circle around one of their own, who thrashed on the floor with her hands bound behind her back. The fallen Arxian was young, maybe equivalent to early 20s in human years. Her skin had the usual crystalline quality of her species, but something was wrong with the bioluminescent patterns that normally glowed. Soft blue beneath the surface, they pulsed sickly purple and spread like veins. Up her neck toward her face, medical assistance needed, Marcus announced as he pushed through the circle. The Arxians stepped back quickly, their faces showing an emotion he had learned to recognize as fear mixed with disgust. No human? The Arxian captain said sharply. His name was Curseth, and Marcus had worked with him for 8 months on this miserable planet. Step away from Scout Sularine immediately. Marcus knelt beside the young scout anyway and pulled out his medical scanner. The device hummed to life and began analyzing her condition while she looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes that seemed to beg for help. The scanner results made his blood run cold. Valkara spore infection. Stage 1. Approximately 4 hours since initial contact. I can treat this, Marcus said quickly, already reaching for anti-parasitic compounds in his kit. Get her to the shuttle, and I'll work on her during evac. Absolutely not, Curseth interrupted. His voice was flat and final. Coalition Medical Protocol Section 7. Paragraph 12. Any soldier infected with Valkara spores must be terminated immediately or abandoned to prevent spread to healthy troops. Marcus stood slowly and faced the captain. Around them, the other Arxians had already started backing toward the bunker exit. She's infected. Not dead, Marcus said, keeping his voice level despite the anger building in his chest. There are treatment options, with a 0.3% success rate, a new voice added. Marcus turned to see Lieutenant Krexnel, a Cormouth warrior whose reptilian features never showed much emotion. The infected become drones within 72 hours. It is foolish and dangerous to waste resources on a statistical impossibility. She's a person, not a statistic. Marcus shot back. Curseth's luminescent markings flickered with what might have been regret, but his voice remained hard. She was a person. Now she is a vector for enemy conversion and must be treated as such. On the floor, Sularine made a choking sound that might have been a sob. Her whole body shook as the purple veins spread further across her skin. Please, she whispered in broken standard. Her species had only joined the coalition 2 years ago, and many still struggled with the common language. Please let him go. I understand. I accept. Marcus crouched beside her again and put a hand on her shoulder. She flinched at the contact, as if expecting him to deliver the killing blow. What about quarantine? Marcus suggested desperately. Seal her in the bunker with supplies and medical equipment. If she beats it somehow, we can retrieve her when we retake this sector. The other coalition soldiers were already filing out of the bunker. A Zythresh officer with compound eyes and chitinous armor paused at the doorway. The human shows ignorance of the situation. The insectoid soldier clicked in mechanical standard. This outpost will be overrun within 6 hours. The Valkara will find her and convert her regardless. Killing her now is mercy. A Valorian medic, One of Marcus's own colleagues from a species known for their compassion shook her feathered head sadly. "I am sorry, Marcus, but the protocols exist for good reason. We cannot risk the infection spreading to the evacuation ships." One by one they left. Even Curseth eventually turned away from his own scout with what might have been grief in his eyes, but iron determination in his voice. Sealed the bunker. He ordered his remaining soldiers. "She has rations for 3 days and a sidearm with 1 charge. She may choose her own timing." Marcus watched in disbelief as the Arxians moved toward the door. Soarin's squad mates, soldiers she had served beside for 2 years, walked past her without a second glance. "You're just leaving her," Marcus said. It wasn't a question, just a statement of stunned realization. "We are following protocol." Curseth replied, "As you should. The last shuttle departs in 4 minutes. I suggest you board it human." The Arxian captain was the last to leave. He paused at the doorway and looked back at Celerine one final time. "You served with honor, Scout," he said formally. "May your light return to the crystal stars." Then he was gone and the bunker fell silent, except for Celerine's ragged breathing and the distant sound of shuttle engines. Marcus stood in the empty space and looked down at the young Arxian, who had been abandoned by her own people, by the entire coalition, left to die alone in a sealed bunker on a planet about to be overrun by parasitic aliens. His combat radio crackled. "Chun, this is Transport 7. We are final bird out. Confirm you are aboard." Marcus looked at Celerine, who stared back at him with those terrified, crystalline eyes. Purple veins now covered half her face, and her breath came in short, painful gasps. "Chun, confirm boarding status now. We are wheels up in 90 seconds. He thought about the statistical probability. 0.3%. Survival rate, even with aggressive treatment. Thought about coalition protocol and the logical arguments, and the very real danger of infection spread. He thought about walking away and letting her die. Alone then, he pressed the transmit button on his radio. "Transport 7, this is Chun. Negative on boarding. I am staying groundside." The radio exploded with confused voices demanding confirmation, demanding explanation. Ordering him to board immediately, Marcus pulled the radio off his belt and set it on a supply crate. He could hear the pilot's voice growing more desperate as the seconds ticked down. "Lieutenant Chun, you are ordered to board this shuttle immediately." "Acknowledge." Instead, Marcus pulled out his medical kit and began setting up a treatment station. Behind him, he heard the bunker doors seal with a heavy clang as the last coalition soldiers departed. The shuttle engines roared to full power outside and then faded into the distance. Isolar stared at him with confusion overriding even her fear. "Why?" she gasped. "Why did you stay? I am dead." "The infection cannot be stopped." Marcus pulled out a portable medical scanner and began a detailed analysis of her condition. 0.3% isn't zero, he said calmly while his hands moved with practiced efficiency, setting up 4 lines and preparing compounds. "For humans, that's enough." "I do not understand," she whispered. Marcus looked at her directly. "My species has a saying. We don't leave people behind on a maybe. You've got a chance, Scout. Might be small, but it's there, and that means we fight for it." Outside the bunker, the last sounds of evacuation faded away. Above them, the Velkara swarm grew closer with every passing minute. Marcus, Chun, and Celerine were alone on a dying planet with an impossible infection and odds that any logical species would call suicide. But Marcus just kept working, kept preparing treatments, kept fighting for that 0.3%, because for humans, that was enough. Hour 3 of treatment, and Celerine was getting worse despite everything Marcus tried. The purple veins had spread across her entire upper body, and her bioluminescent markings flickered weakly like dying stars. Marcus had set up a complete mobile medical station using every piece of equipment from the abandoned bunker. Monitors beeped steadily around them, displaying vital signs that made his trained eye narrow with concern. "Tell me about the pain," he said while preparing another injection. Scale of 1 to 10. Celerine's laugh came out as more of a wheeze. "Your species uses numbers for suffering," she managed between labored breaths. "Arxians would say it feels like my inner light is being strangled." "Extinguish section by section. That's a 9 then." Marcus muttered and adjusted the pain medication accordingly. He had been synthesizing compounds for hours now, using human immune system research as a baseline and adapting it for Arxian physiology. It was desperate work, mixing treatments that had never been tested cross-species, watching for reactions that could kill her faster than the infection. "Why did you really stay?" Celerine asked suddenly. Her eyes focused on him with surprising clarity, despite the infection ravaging her system. "Your people must think you are insane." Marcus didn't look up from the compound he was preparing. "Probably. Then why?" He finally met her gaze. "Because you were scared and alone, and you deserved better than dying in a sealed room waiting for the end." "That is not logical," she said. Confusion colored her voice along with the pain. "You have condemned yourself to death alongside me. What you call deserving is irrelevant to survival." Marcus attached a new IV bag to her line. "Maybe, but humans don't calculate worth the same way your people do. We've got this concept called hope that kind of overrides statistical probability." "Hope." Celerine repeated the word like it was foreign to her language. "Which it probably was. I do not understand this concept." "Yeah, I'm getting that," Marcus said with a slight smile. He pulled over a supply crate and sat down beside her medical bed. "Let me explain while this compound works its way into your system." Outside the bunker, the sounds of distant explosions had grown closer. The Velkara swarm was advancing faster than projected, but Marcus tried to ignore that. "In Arxian culture," Celerine said slowly, struggling to form words through the pain and medication, "the individual exists to serve the collective. My death prevents possible infection of my unit. Therefore, my death has value. My survival has only 0.3% value. See, that's where humans differ," Marcus explained while monitoring her vital signs. "We think the individual has inherent value regardless of their utility to the group." Sounds like philosophical nonsense, I know, but it changes how we act. "It is nonsense," Celerine said, but without malice. Simply stating a fact as she understood it. "You will die here for a 0.3% chance. You have thrown away 100% certainty of your own survival for almost nothing." Marcus shrugged. "Almost nothing is still something. Besides, I've seen plenty of situations where almost nothing turned into everything. Humans are stubborn that way." The monitors suddenly began alarming. Celerine's heart rate spiked, and her temperature rose sharply. Marcus was on his feet instantly, hands moving across the medical equipment with practiced speed. "Stay with me, Scout," he ordered while injecting a stabilizer into her fore. "This is just the infection trying to gain ground. We're not letting it win." Celerine gasped out. Even in her deteriorating state, she caught the word choice. "You speak as though we fight this together." "We do," Marcus said simply while adjusting her medications. "I can't cure you alone, and you can't fight this alone. Teamwork, Scout. That's how humans survive impossible situations." Her vital signs stabilized after several tense minutes. Marcus sagged back onto his supply crate and rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. "You have not slept," Celerine observed. Her voice was weak but clearer than it had been. "How many hours now?" 28, Marcus admitted. "But I've gone longer during field operations. I'm good for at least another 12 before I need to crash." "This is irrational," she said. "You require rest to function. If you collapse from exhaustion, we both die. If I sleep, you might die while I'm out," Marcus countered. "Not acceptable. I'll sleep when you're stable." Sauron was quiet for a long moment. Her crystalline features reflected the dim emergency lighting in strange patterns. My unit left me without hesitation, she finally said. Her voice carried something that might have been grief. My captain, whom I have served under for 2 years. My squad mates who I have fought beside. Even our Valorian medic who speaks constantly of compassion. They all walked away. Marcus checked her temperature again. Still elevated but not critical. They followed their training, and you violated yours. Sillarine pointed out. Human military has protocols as well. Yes, yeah we do, Marcus confirmed. Lots of them. But we've also got this other thing that sometimes overrides protocol. What thing? Conscience, Marcus said. He began preparing another treatment. This one a risky combination of human antibodies and Arxian cellular boosters. The idea that sometimes the rules are wrong, and you have to make a choice based on what you believe is right rather than what you're told to do. That sounds like chaos, Sillarine said. How does your military function if soldiers can simply decide which orders to follow? Marcus smiled grimly. It's complicated. We don't ignore orders lightly, and there are consequences for breaking protocol, but we also have a saying. I was just following orders isn't an excuse for doing the wrong thing. So you believe leaving me was wrong. I know it was wrong, Marcus corrected. You're a living being with thoughts and feelings, and a 0.3% chance. That's enough to fight for in my book. Another alarm. This time from the bunker's external sensors, Marcus pulled up the security feed on a nearby monitor. His expression darkened as he watched the screen. What is it? Sillarine asked. She tried to sit up but was too weak. Volcara scouts, Marcus said quietly. About 2 kilometers out and heading this way. We've got maybe 6 hours before they reach the bunker. Then you must go, Sillarine said urgently. Her eyes went wide with fear, not for herself but for him. You can still reach the evacuation zones. Take one of the scout vehicles. Leave before the swarm arrives. Marcus didn't even look at her. He was already pulling weapons from the bunker's emergency armory and checking power cells. Not happening, Scout, he said calmly while loading a pulse rifle. I told you, we don't leave people behind on a maybe, but I am dying anyway, Sillarine protested. Tears leaked from her crystalline eyes, an unusual display of emotion for her typically stoic species. At least you can survive. Please, Marcus. I do not wish to be responsible for your death. He set down the rifle and moved back to her bedside. His hand found hers and squeezed gently. Listen to me, he said firmly but kindly. I made this choice with full knowledge of the consequences. You're not responsible for anything except fighting this infection with everything you've got. I'll handle the Volcara. You handle staying alive. Deal. You are insane, she whispered. Probably, he agreed with a slight smile. But I'm the insane human who's going to make sure that 0.3% has a fighting chance. He returned to the weapons and began setting up defensive positions around the medical area. Plasma mines at the entrance choke points, automated turrets covering the approach corridors. Every trick he had learned in 8 months of fighting the swarm, Sillarine watched him work through increasingly. Heavy eyelids. The medications were pulling her towards sleep, despite her fear. Marcus, she called softly. Yeah, Scout. In Arxian culture we have no word for what you are doing, she said. Her voice was fading as unconsciousness claimed her. But I think I'm beginning to understand this hope thing you spoke of. Marcus glanced back at her. Good. Hold on to that. It's going to get us through this. As Sillarine slipped into medicated sleep, Marcus pulled out his personal communicator. He encrypted a message with his command codes and typed quickly. 2. Commander Williams. Onsk Indomitable from LT Marcus Chun. 47th Combined Regiment message. Respectfully submitting final report. Remained groundside to treat infected coalition soldier, abandoned under Protocol Sections 7 to 12. 0.3% survival odds, but not zero. Requesting nitrogen monoxide posthumous honors. This was a choice, not a sacrifice. Protocol is not morality. Chen Out sent the message knowing it might never reach anyone. The Velkara were jamming most communications, and the human fleet was 3 systems away by now, but he had to try. Had to make sure someone knew why he stayed outside the bunker. The alien swarm grew closer with every passing minute inside Marcus. Chun checked his weapons one more time and settled in beside his patient for what would either be the longest night of his life or the last. Hour 18 and everything was falling apart simultaneously thrashed on the medical bed, her body convulsing as the Volcara infection reached critical stage. The purple veining had consumed nearly all of her natural bioluminescence, and her eyes had started to show the milky film that preceded final neural conversion. Marcus stood over her with a syringe in one shaking hand. He had been awake for 43 hours straight, and his vision blurred at the edges from exhaustion. This was it. The last option. The desperate gamble he had been avoiding because it would either save her or kill her in the next 6 hours. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the semi-conscious Arxian. "This is going to hurt." The compound in the syringe was based on human immune response protocols, specifically the cytokine storm reaction that human bodies triggered when facing unknown pathogens. It was a scorched earth approach. The immune system essentially went to war with everything in the body, friendly or hostile, in an attempt to eliminate the threat. Humans could sometimes survive it with aggressive medical intervention. Arxians had never been tested for this kind of treatment. Marcus had run every simulation his medical computer could process. Survival probability ranged from 2% to 15% depending on variables he couldn't control. Still better than the 0% she faced without intervention. He injected the compound into her primary circulatory access point and stepped back to watch for 30 seconds. Nothing happened, and Silurine's entire body went rigid. Her back arched off the bed, and a sound somewhere between a scream and a wail tore from her throat. The monitors exploded with alarms as her temperature spiked to 42 degrees. Dangerously high, even for Arxian physiology. Marcus grabbed cooling packs from the emergency supplies and began packing them around her body, while simultaneously preparing anti-seizure medications. "Come on," he muttered while working at frantic speed. "Come on, Scout. Your immune system just needs to recognize the difference between you and the infection. Fight smart, not hard." Her temperature hit 44 degrees. Marcus plunged her into an ice bath. He had prepared for exactly this scenario. The crystalline quality of her skin made her look like she was made of frost as the cold water covered her. She seized twice in the next 10 minutes. Each time, Marcus had to inject stabilizers and pray they worked on Arxian neural pathways the same way they worked on humans. Outside the bunker, the Velkara had reached the outer perimeter. The automated defenses opened fire. Plasma bursts lit up the external camera feeds as the first wave of drones charged the bunker entrance. Marcus split his attention between Silurine's critical condition and the security monitors. This was the nightmare scenario he had been dreading. Fighting a two-front war against infection and invasion with no backup. The first defensive line held for 8 minutes before being overrun. Marcus pulled Silurine from the ice bath. Her temperature had dropped to 41 degrees. Still dangerous, but not immediately fatal. He wrapped her in thermal blankets and strapped her securely to the bed. Then grabbed his pulse rifle and moved to the bunker's main corridor. The second defensive line was already engaged. His automated turrets hammered away at the approaching swarm while plasma mines detonated in carefully timed sequences. 3 Velkara drones made it through. Marcus dropped them with precise shots to their central nervous clusters, the rifle bucking against his shoulder with each discharge. "Not today," he snarled at the corpses. "You don't get her. Not while I'm still breathing." He fell back to the medical bay and checked Silene's vitals. Her temperature was climbing again, back up to 42. Marcus prepped another round of cooling treatment, but paused when he saw new readings on the scanner, the purple veining. It was receding slowly, almost imperceptibly, but definitely shrinking back from the areas it had consumed. Holy, Marcus breathed, not quite believing what he was seeing. It's working. Her immune system is winning. Another explosion rocked the bunker. The third defensive line had been breached. Marcus set up his final fallback position in the medical bay itself. He placed the last of his plasma mines at the corridor entrance and powered up a heavy pulse cannon he had salvaged from the bunkers. Emergency Armorisalairen's temperature spiked again. 43 degrees. Her body was destroying itself in the effort to eliminate the infection. Marcus made a split-second decision. He injected her with a powerful sedative to slow her metabolism, then packed fresh ice around her while keeping one hand on his rifle. The monitors showed Velkara filling the outer corridors. Dozens of them, drawn by the heat signatures and movement in the bunker. Come on then, Marcus said to the approaching swarm. Let's see how many of you I can take with me. The first drone appeared in the medical bay entrance. Marcus squeezed the trigger and the plasma mine detonated, vaporizing the creature and the three behind it. More kept coming. He fired the pulse cannon in controlled bursts, each shot calculated to maximize damage while conserving power. Drones fell in sprays of ichor and chitinous fragments. The temperature alarm shrieked. Siren had hit 44 degrees. Again, Marcus ducked behind cover to avoid return fire from a Velkara spitter, swapped power cells in his rifle, then ran back to plunge Siren into the ice bath. Again, a drone made it past his firing line. Marcus drew his sidearm and put 3 shots into it at point-blank range, then kicked the twitching corpse away from the medical equipment. Not her, he shouted at the swarm. You want someone? Come at me. Leave her alone. More drones poured through the entrance. Marcus's world narrowed to a repeating cycle. Shoot, move, check vitals, shoot, reload, adjust treatment. Shoot. His hands shook from exhaustion and adrenaline. His aim was getting sloppy, and he knew a plasma bolt grazed his shoulder. Pain flared hot and immediate, but he couldn't stop to treat it. Siren flatlined. Cardiac monitor went to a steady tone, and Marcus's heart nearly stopped with abandoned his defensive position and sprinted to her side. His hands flew across the medical controls, preparing the defibrillation sequence. Don't you dare, he commanded while charging the device. Don't you dare give up now. Not after everything. He placed the paddles against her chest. Clear. The shock made her body jerk. The monitors stayed flat. Again, Marcus reset the charge. Come on, Scout. You're stronger than this. Second shock. Still nothing. Behind him, a Velkara drone entered the medical bay. Marcus didn't even turn around, just fired his sidearm blindly while keeping his attention on Siren. Third shock. The monitor blipped. Once, twice, then established a weak but steady rhythm. Marcus nearly collapsed with relief. The drone he had fired at fell with a hole through its sensory cluster. Blind luck had saved him. Siren's temperature was dropping. The readings showed 41 degrees, and falling toward normal range. The purple veining continued to recede. Her natural blue bioluminescence was starting to show through in patches. That's it, Marcus encouraged while adjusting her medications. Keep fighting. Your body knows what to do now. Just keep fighting. Another wave of drones rushed the medical bay. Marcus grabbed the pulse cannon and fired until the power cell went dry. Then switched to his rifle. He was down to his last 3 power cells. The swarm showed no signs of stopping. Siren seized again, but this time it was different. Her body was fighting the infection, not succumbing to it. Marcus barely had time to inject stabilizers before having to return to combat. A plasma bolt hit his leg. He went down hard, but kept firing from prone position. Just a little longer, he gasped. not sure if he was talking to himself or Silarine. Just hold on a little longer. The bunker walls shook from repeated impacts. The Velkara were trying to breach through the reinforced barriers. Marcus's rifle clicked empty. Last power cell expended. He drew his sidearm and checked the charge. 8 shots left. 8 shots as inches a swarm that numbered in the hundreds Silarines. Monitor showed her temperature stabilizing at 38 degrees. The infection was in full retreat. She was going to live. Marcus smiled, despite the impossibility of their situation. At least he had managed that much. The medical bay entrance filled with Velkara. Too many to count, all surging forward in a coordinated attack pattern. Marcus raised his sidearm with a steady hand. Worth, he'd said quietly, and prepared to make his last stand count. Then the entire bunker wall exploded inward, not from Velkara breaching charges. From something much more powerful, a human drop pod tore through the reinforced concrete like tissue paper. Armored Marines poured out before the debris had finished falling. Pulse rifles blazed with disciplined fire. The Velkara swarm was cut down in seconds by coordinated overlapping fields of fire. A lieutenant in full combat armor strode through the carnage and stopped when he saw Marcus. The human medic was on the floor, wounded and exhausted. One arm still stretched toward his patient, while the other held an empty sidearm. Lieutenant Chen, the Marine said with what sounded like respect mixed with exasperation. Sir, the old man got your message. He turned the whole battle group around. Marcus tried to respond but found he couldn't form words. The adrenaline was wearing off, and his body was shutting down from exhaustion. Secure the medic and the Arxian. The lieutenant ordered his team. Combat medical. Chen needs immediate treatment for plasma burns and exhaustion. The scout. Marcus managed to rasp out. She's critical. Infection protocol. We know, sir. A human combat medic was already scanning Silarine. Silarine woke to the sound of controlled chaos. Human voices calling out tactical coordinates. The whine of medical equipment, and the distant thunder of sustained weapons fire. Her eyes opened slowly. The world came into focus in fragments. She was on a transport shuttle. That much was clear from the vibration of engines and the acceleration. Pushing her into the medical gurney, a human medic worked over her with quick, efficient movements, checking vital signs and adjusting fluid drips. She's awake, the medic called over his shoulder. Vitals are stable. Infection markers down 73%. Silarine tried to sit up, but found she lacked the strength. Her entire body felt like it had been torn apart and reassembled incorrectly. Easy there, Scout, the medic said gently, pressing her back down. You've been through hell. Give yourself time to recover. Marcus, Silarine's voice came out as barely a whisper. Where's Lieutenant Chen is 2 beds over? The medic gestured with his head. He's unconscious but stable. Plasma burns, severe exhaustion, and a minor concussion. Tough Sonophobage stayed on his feet until we secured the area. Silarine turned her head. Through the medical equipment she could see Marcus lying on another gurney, his shoulder and leg wrapped in regenerative bandages, his face peaceful in medicated sleep. He stayed, she said. The words felt inadequate for what had happened. He stayed when everyone else left. That's what we do, ma'am, the medic replied while checking her temperature. Human military doesn't do acceptable losses. Not when there's even one stubborn bastard still fighting. The shuttle lurched as it changed course. Outside the viewports, Silarine could see other craft flying in tight formation. Where are we going? She asked. Extraction Point Gamma, the medic explained. The UNSC battle group established a secure zone about 40 kilometers from your position. We're pulling out all remaining coalition forces from the sector, but Silarine's mind struggled to process this information. The coalition evacuated days ago. They declared this sector lost. The medic's expression hardened. Yeah, well, humans don't declare sectors lost while our people are still breathing in them. Commander Williams turned 3 capital ships around when he got Chun's message. Been fighting our way back to your position for the last 18 hours. Salarine stared at him in disbelief. 3 capital ships. For 1 medic and 1 infected scout. For 2 soldiers who deserve backup. The medic corrected. The numbers came second. The shuttle shook from nearby explosions. Salarine's monitors spiked with her sudden fear. Just our boys keeping the Volcara off our tail. The medic said calmly, nothing to worry about. Human Marines are very good at what they do. As if to prove his point, the tactical display showed a squadron of human fighters engaging Volcara flyers. The alien craft were torn apart with ruthless efficiency. Salerne watched in fascination. She had seen human forces in combat before, but always as part of larger coalition operations. This was different. This was humans fighting not for strategic objectives or territorial gains, but purely to protect their own. Shuttle touched down at the extraction point. Human soldiers formed a tight perimeter around the landing zone, their weapons creating overlapping fields of fire that nothing could penetrate. Salarian was transferred to a proper medical facility inside one of the human ships. The UNSC carrier Indomitable. According to the markings, the medical bay was chaos. Dozens of wounded coalition soldiers receiving treatment from human medical staff. How many? Salarine asked weakly as they moved her gurney through the crowded space. How many did you extract? 47 so far, a passing officer replied. Mostly stragglers who got cut off during the initial evacuation. We've been sweeping the entire sector for survivors. 47 soldiers that the coalition had written off as acceptable losses. 47 lives that humans had risked 3 capital ships to. Retrieve Salarine's understanding of human military doctrine began to shift. This wasn't just about Marcus's individual choice to stay with her. This was something deeper, something fundamental to how humans conducted war. She was placed in a recovery room with advanced medical monitoring. The human doctors assured her the infection was completely eliminated, and she would make a full recovery within a week. Marcus was brought in an hour later. Still unconscious, but his vital signs strong. Salarine watched him sleep and tried to understand what kind of species would do this. A nurse came by to check on her. A young human woman with kind eyes. You're the scout Chen stayed for, the nurse said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Salarine confirmed. I still do not understand why. The nurse smiled. Because you mattered. Individual worth isn't calculated by tactical value in human culture. You're a living being who deserved a chance, and Chen gave you one. But he could have died. Salarine protested. He almost did die. The logical choice was to evacuate with the others. Logic and morality aren't always the same thing, the nurse replied while adjusting Salarine's 4. Humans learned that lesson the hard way throughout our history. Sometimes doing the right thing means rejecting the logical thing. She finished her checks and started to leave, then paused at the door. You know what the crew is calling you to? The nurse asked. Salarine shook her head. Chun's 0.3%. The nurse smiled. Because he stayed for a 0.3% chance and turned it into 100%. That's very human of him. After the nurse left, Salarine lay in silence and processed everything. The coalition had abandoned her based on sound tactical reasoning. The infection was almost certainly fatal and risking more lives for near zero probability of success. Violated basic military efficiency, but humans had rejected that calculus entirely. They had turned around capital ships, launched rescue operations, risked hundreds of lives, all because one medic decided that 0.3% was worth fighting for. Hours later, Marcus finally woke. His eyes found Salarine immediately, and he smiled. Hey, Scout, he said. His voice was rough but warm. Told you we'd make it. You were insane, Salarine replied, but there was no anger in her words. Only wonder, Completely and totally insane. Yeah, probably, Marcus agreed. He tried to sit up and winced. How are you feeling? Alive? Celerine said simply, because of you. Because you stayed when everyone else left. Someone had to, Marcus said with a shrug that made him wince again. Might as well be me. The door opened and a human commander entered. An older man with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Lieutenant Chun. The commander's voice carried authority and warmth in equal measure. Good to see you awake. Marcus tried to salute from his bed. The commander waved him off. At ease, son. You've earned some rest. The commander turned to Celerine. Scout Celerine. I'm Commander Williams of the UNSC Indomitable. I want you to know that your case has been forwarded to Coalition Medical Command. They're re-evaluating Protocol Section 712 in light of Chun's successful treatment. Celine's eyes went wide. They are changing the protocols. Not yet, Williams admitted, but they're listening. Hard to argue with a 0.3% success rate when the patient is sitting in front of them, fully recovered. He moved to leave, but Marcus called after him. Sir. About my message. Protocol is not morality, Williams quoted back. Damn right it isn't. What you did down there was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've seen in 30 years of service. Probably both. Am I being court-martialed, sir? Marcus asked carefully. Williams laughed. A genuine sound of amusement. Court-martialed. Son, you're being recommended for a commendation. Controversial as hell, but the brass agrees that sometimes protocol needs to take a back seat to doing the right thing. After Williams left, Celerine and Marcus sat in comfortable silence. Your people came for you, Celerine finally said. My people left me. Your people turned around an entire battle group. That's what we do, Marcus replied. We don't leave anyone behind. Not if there's even a chance of bringing them home. I am not human, Celerine pointed out. Yet you fought for me as if I was. Marcus met her eyes. You're a soldier. You were scared and alone, and you deserved someone to stand with you. That's all the reason I needed. Celerine's bioluminescent markings glowed soft blue for the first time since the infection. Her natural color, healthy and strong. I wish to request transfer to human units, she said suddenly. If they will accept me, Marcus smiled. I think that can be arranged. Though I should warn you, we're kind of crazy by Coalition standards. I know, Celerine replied. Her markings shifted to warm gold. The Arxian color of deep respect and understanding. That is exactly why I wish to serve with you. I want to learn this hope thing you spoke of. This idea that 0.3% is enough. Welcome to humanity, then Scout. Fair warning. We're stubborn. We don't know when to quit. And we have a bad habit of making impossible things possible. Good, Celerine said softly. I have had enough of calculating acceptable losses. I prefer your way. Outside the medical bay, the human fleet continued rescue operations, bringing home every lost soldier they could find, because for humans, no one was acceptable to leave behind, not even at 0.3%. 3 months after Thesser 4 and the Coalition Medical Summit was in Celerine stood at the central podium of the Grand Council chamber on Station Kepler 9. Her crystalline features calm despite the storm of voices surrounding her. This is preposterous, Captain Karsith argued from the Arxian delegation. Her former commander looked uncomfortable facing her across the chamber. You are asking us to throw away millennia of practical military doctrine, based on one statistical anomaly. 12 anomalies, Celerine corrected firmly. She gestured to the holographic display showing medical data. Since Lieutenant Chun's treatment protocol was implemented 3 months ago, 12 Coalition soldiers have survived Velcar infection. The survival rate has increased from 0.3% to 12% with proper intervention. A Cormeth general rose from his seat. His reptilian features showed skepticism. 12 survivors against how many resource expenditures? How many medical personnel placed at risk? How many tactical disadvantages accepted? Marcus stood from where he sat in the human delegation section. He wore his dress uniform with the new commendation ribbon that had caused such controversy in Coalition. Circles, General Krathix, Marcus said respectfully. With respect, sir. You're asking the wrong question. Enlighten me, human. The general's tone was dry. You're calculating cost versus benefit, as if the survivors are products of resource investment. Marcus explained. But those 12 soldiers aren't statistics. They're people with families, with units who need them, with knowledge and experience that took years to develop. The real question isn't what did we spend to save them, but what would we have lost by abandoning them? The chamber erupted in arguments. Some delegates nodding agreement while others shouted objection. Solar raised her hand for silence. When the noise died down, she activated the holographic projector. 12 faces appeared in the display. The survivors of Velkara infection treated under Chun's protocols. These are not numbers on a resource allocation report, Silurine said. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber. This is Corporal Vexenol of the Xi-Thresh Infantry. He has 14 years of combat experience and 3 children waiting for him at home. This is Scout Mirasith, an Arxian like myself, who was abandoned by her unit just as I was. This is Private Jenkins, a human soldier who survived because his Valorian squadmate refused to leave him behind. She let that last point hang in the air. A Valorian had adopted human protocols and saved a human life. The change is already happening. Silurine continued. Soldiers across the coalition are questioning the old protocols. They see that survival is possible, and they are asking why we accepted so many deaths as inevitable when they were not. Ambassador Telvac of the Valorian delegation stood. Her feathered crest raised in a gesture of concern. No one disputes that these survivors are valuable. Telvac said gently, but we must consider the broader tactical implications. If we commit resources to treating every infected soldier, we may lack those resources when they are critically needed elsewhere. Marcus pulled up another data display. This one showing human military operations over the past 3 months. Ambassador. Human forces have been treating infected soldiers aggressively for 3 months now. He said, our combat effectiveness has increased by 18%. Not decreased. The chamber fell silent. How is this possible? General Krathix demanded. Morale, a new voice answered. Commander Williams stepped forward from the human delegation. When soldiers know their military will fight for them, even when the odds are terrible, they fight harder. They take smarter risks because they trust their backup. They don't have to calculate whether their life is worth saving because they know their command already considers them worth everything. Kursitz shook his head. This is emotional reasoning, not tactical analysis, is it? Saurin challenged her former captain directly. Captain, when you left me in that bunker, what happened to your unit's cohesion? Kursith's bioluminescent markings flickered. A sign of discomfort. What do you mean? I have read the after-action reports, Saurin said quietly. Your unit suffered a 22% decrease in operational effectiveness over the following month. 3 soldiers requested transfers. 2 filed formal objections to command decisions. You yourself submitted a letter questioning your own judgment. The Arxian captain said nothing, but his silence was confirmation. That is the real cost of acceptable losses. Celerine continued, turning to address the entire assembly. Every time we abandon someone based on statistical probability, we damage the trust that holds our units together. We tell our soldiers that they are expendable, that their worth is calculated rather than inherent. She walked to the center of the chamber. Her movement still showed some weakness from her ordeal, but her voice was strong. I stand here today because one human medic rejected that calculation, Celerine said. He chose connection over calculation. He chose to believe that my life was worth fighting for even when the numbers said otherwise. And in doing so, he proved something fundamental. What? Someone called from the audience. That we have been measuring worth incorrectly, Sillerin answered. Human military doctrine operates on a principle they call inherent dignity. The idea that a person's value is not determined by their utility or their probability of survival, but by their existence as a thinking, feeling being. Philosophical nonsense, a delegate muttered. Marcus smiled. That's what Scout Sillerin said to me when I first explained it. But philosophy becomes practical when it changes outcomes. Our survival rate proves that. The holographic display shifted to show a real-time tactical situation. A joint human coalition operation in progress. This is happening right now, Commander Williams explained. Third planet in the Arcturus system. Coalition forces encountered Velkara resistance 2 hours ago. 4 soldiers were infected. The chamber watched as the tactical display showed the units. Response instead of immediate termination protocols. Medical teams rushed forward. Human medics worked alongside Valorian doctors and Arxian specialists. Defensive perimeters formed around the infected while treatment began. All 4 are responding to treatment. Williams said, expected survival rate, 80%. And the operation continues with full unit cohesion because everyone knows their military won't abandon them. Sillerin saw understanding beginning to dawn on some faces in the chamber. Others still looked skeptical. I propose a formal amendment to Coalition Medical Protocol Section 712. She announced, henceforth to be known as Shen's Protocol. When a soldier is infected with Velkara spores, immediate termination is no longer the default response. Aggressive treatment must be attempted for a minimum of 48 hours. Unless the infection has progressed beyond Stage 3. Only then may termination or abandonment be considered. The chamber erupted again. This time, the arguments were more divided as Zethresh Admiral stood. Her compound eyes gleamed in the chamber's light. This human sentiment is admirable, but impractical. We cannot restructure our entire medical corps based on emotional appeals. Then don't. Marcus said bluntly, base it on the evidence. 12 survivors where we would have had 0. Improved morale across all units that adopt the protocol. Increased combat effectiveness. These are measurable outcomes, not emotional appeals. General Krathix studied the data for a long moment. His expression unreadable. The Cormant hegemony will vote in favor, he finally said. The chamber gasped in surprise, not because we accept this human philosophy, but because we cannot argue with the tactical results. If treating infected soldiers increases unit effectiveness by 18%, it would be illogical to maintain the old protocols. Other delegates began to murmur. Calculations being run, data being reviewed. Ambassador Telvac stood again. The Valorian Confederation votes in favor. We have always valued compassion, but allowed practicality to override it. Perhaps it is time we learn from our human allies that compassion can be practical. One by one, the delegations voted. Some enthusiastically, others reluctantly, but the tide was turning. Karstev remained seated, his face troubled. Captain, Sillerin addressed him directly. I do not ask this for myself. I have already survived. I ask this for the next scout who becomes infected, for the next soldier who faces impossible odds. Will you vote to give them the chance I received? The Arxian captain stood slowly. The Arxian Assembly votes in favor, he said quietly, and I formally apologize to Scout Sillerin for abandoning her on Messer 4. It was tactically sound, but morally wrong. Sillerin's markings glowed warm gold. Apology accepted, Captain. You followed your training. Now we change the training. The vote passed with 73% approval. Chan's protocol became official coalition doctrine as the session ended and delegates filed out. Marcus found Sillerin standing at the viewport overlooking the station's hangar bay. You did it, Scout, he said. Joining her, you changed coalition policy. We did it, Sullering corrected. You proved it was possible. I just showed everyone the proof. They watched as mixed-species units boarded transports below. Human Marines working alongside Oxian scouts. Cormath warriors sharing equipment with Valorian medics. It's spreading, Marcus observed, not just the medical protocol. The whole philosophy. I've seen Zythresh officers arguing for rescue operations they would have